Okay, today we're going to talk about the difference between fission and fusion. There are very drastic differences between the two, what they're used for, um, and how they act. And it's really important to know what the differences are in order to know which is best for a certain situation, where a certain situation is happening. So the first thing I want you to do is watch this video, the whole video. Okay, and then these links will take you to different parts. So the first thing we're going to talk about is fission. Okay, so fission is what happens in nuclear power plants. Okay, we have one in Baxley. That's where we get our power from. So if you have Georgia Power, you get it from a nuclear power plant. During fission, we have these large radioactive isotopes like uranium with 92 protons. Remember, it's so huge, the strong force can't hardly take it together. We shoot a neutron at it, and when we do that, it splits it into two other atoms and some neutrons, and there's our energy, and we capture that. And then these three neutrons go on to break apart some more. So uranium is huge and it's really easy to find. So they use this one because it's very easy to split apart. Because remember, that strong force is not strong enough. So they hit it with a neutron, it breaks apart, and you get a lot of energy. And you also get more neutrons that can start the next reaction. So what that's called is a chain reaction. When one thing starts another thing that starts another thing. So what it looks like is this right here. You have your big ball of uranium. The total mass is 235 because we have 92 protons and then a ton of neutrons. So when we shoot one neutron at it, watch what happens. Okay, it splits and then we have more neutrons. And then when we look at it, you'll see that it starts more chain reactions if we have more nuclei. So let's put a bunch in here. So you can see the neutrons start other chain reactions. So this is how it looks, and all this energy is being harnessed for us. Okay? So fusion is the opposite. Instead of breaking something apart, we're putting things together. So press play here to look at fusion. Okay, so fission happens in the nuclear power plants. Fusion happens in the sun. Now, fusion produces tons more energy than fission. So the question is, why do we not use fusion and only use fission? Well, fusion has to be really, really hot, and we can't get it that hot here on Earth usually. So hydrogen 2, which is an isotope of hydrogen, hydrogen 3, so two atoms of hydrogen come together and they fuse to form helium because one proton come together. They make two protons, that's helium. And when they do that, they release lots of heat and energy. So we have hydrogen, hydrogen, one proton, coming together make helium with two protons and a ton of energy and more neutrons. So fusion means to combine. If you fuse things, they combine. So this actually produces way more energy, but we don't use that for power because of how hot it has to be. So in the sun, these two isotopes of hydrogen combine and produce lots of energy. Scientists want to produce a fusion reactor, but the high temperature is just too difficult. And so these fusion reactors would have many benefits if they could build them, because there's plenty of fuel for fusion because all we need is hydrogen. Um, and since fusion reactions create helium, it gives off alpha radiation. And the hydrogen bomb, if you watch here, it uses the process of fusion. All right, so what we're going to do here is I want you on your page have this assignment. We're going to look at breaks into smaller particles. If two things are starting as a large one and that strong force isn't strong enough and it breaks apart, that is fission. So one goes in fission. Two, comes together. If two things come together, that's fusion. Okay? Follows E equals mc squared. All of them follow Einstein's rule for energy, so that would go in the middle. 4, gives off radiation like alpha, beta, and gamma. That would be both because they both are giving off neutrons and different things. 5, involves heavy isotopes like uranium, big isotopes that are going to be split. That's going to be fission. 6, involves light isotopes like hydrogen, so those aren't going to be split apart. They're going to come together. That's going to be fusion. Produces electrical power in nuclear power plants. That is going to be fission. Produces energy in the sun. Remember, that's got a lot of heat. That's fusion. Produces massive amounts of energy from small amounts of lost mass. That's going to be 9. Both of them produce lots of energy. And they result in highly reactive radioactive waste. This is our problem with nuclear energy. So that's going to go in fission. So fusion generates way more energy than fission, but we don't use that as much because we can't get the temperature so high. So here is your key for checking your answers. Okay, so let's summarize this. Fusion and fission with two separate ones. Notice this is happening in a big sun, and this is a big atom that's splitting apart into smaller ones. So nuclear fusion takes place when small nuclei join to make a large one. Fusion, two things fusing together, two small ones make a large one. So we've got our two hydrogens coming together to make helium, releasing some energy and a neutron. So in the stars, isotopes of hydrogen at high temperatures and under incredible pressure fuse to form helium. This is how many of the elements were made. Fusion usually occurs in atoms that are smaller than iron, okay? So atoms that are really tiny. And an incredible amount of energy is released. Fusion reactors are being developed because we really want to harness this energy. We just can't get the temperature high enough. So fusion is joining two or more things to create a single entity. And now we're going to look at fission. Fission is the opposite. Nuclear fission occurs when an atom breaks down into two smaller atoms. This energy can be converted into electricity. Okay, so we use for electricity. Uranium is our large atom with 92 protons that we use in fission reactors. And what happens is they split or break down into smaller parts. And when an unstable atom, when we shoot it with a neutron, that's what causes it to break down into the smaller parts. A lot of energy is released, usually occurs in very large atoms because remember, they had to be large enough to where the strong force is not going to hold them together. And neutrons are often emitted through fission, and that leads to our chain reaction. Remember, when we have lots of neutrons, they keep going with this chain reaction. All right? So make sure all of your answers are correct.